names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Okay, this is R-rated, by the way. Some of this is totally ridiculous. Nobody endorses it. My wife refuses to see it. And so you are privileged to have this opportunity, so don't tell anybody about it after you've enjoyed it with me, okay? It's off the wall. I'm an unusual speaker as far as being a NASA employee. I spoke to a math group one time and they said, you're part of the Poisson distribution. I said, what do you mean? Well, you know, in the middle, you've got that big hump and that's where all the NASA people are. But you're way out there in the football field, in the fringes, you know, the way you talk. So that's my lot in life. So here's what I want to talk about. I want to explain to you how I came to where I am today. And in doing so, I hope you'll be encouraged wherever you are in life. If you're a great success or you just feel like you're at the bottom of the pit and you don't have anywhere to go but up, or you're way on top and you think, oh, everything's going to be always fine. Well, you can listen to this story and you'll be encouraged because it's about fear, about failure in my life, about how frustrated I got. But ultimately, after 50 years, I found success. So don't give up. I think this is very artful. I created this on my NASA computer. I think it's just wonderful. It's called an animated GIF, okay? And here's a failure. Look at this failure. 10th man on the moon. Charlie Dewey.
Not quite.
Come on, Charlie, get up, please. Don't stay there. It's bad to spend 240,000 miles away the rest of your life. There he is. Charlie succeeded. He didn't give up. He tried and tried, and he did not give up. Would have spoiled his day if he'd have given up, okay? So let's see if we can make it go to the next one. So I'm going to take you in a trip north. I'm from Indiana, so we're going to voyage up there in this magical spacecraft. Here we go. We're flying north over Texarkana. And then we're going to descend in my place. My formative years were spent in Highland, Indiana, in this home here. And that's me as a young 8-9-year-old in Northwest Indiana. And my life was just beginning. I hadn't had too many failures at that time. But my first failure came in first grade, and it was at arithmetic contest, and I lost my first blackboard contest to a little girl. And if you're going to be a NASA engineer and can't win an arithmetic contest, that's not good. And I didn't give up, of course. I pressed on, and so by third grade, look at this, if you can't see it, but it says there, numbers progress. I made an A by third grade in spite of losing my initial contest. So I had other problems, though. You know, you can be a brilliant person, but you can have social issues, of which I had many. And this shows you right here. Now here, it says, I am still, and others talk. This is my report card. This is a dismal report card. Look at this. I failed. N is not good. N says you failed. And I followed directions. I failed that. I failed playing well with my friends. I even failed being friendly and polite. Now, that is pitiful. And the teacher, I don't think, cared much for me. And I agree with her. I don't have a soft voice. In fact, I'm the darling of the AARP circuit. Nobody needs a hearing aid when I unleash my volume. Okay? So I do use a loud voice. Now look at this. This is an indignity. The teacher wrote on the report card, Jerry has talked, not much, but not one very, but a very, very much talker. So I was not doing well. I was not certainly on my way to helping NASA. And so I wanted to show you this because this is how it works in our lives. You really feel like you have not achieved anything and nobody appreciates you. Well, I caddied for players that would be on a golf course across from my home, and so I'd make some money on weekends that way. And this is the point I'm trying to make here. Other people can, even a stranger, can say a good word to you and kind of lift up your spirit. Could be a pastor or teacher, instructor here. Somebody can come into your life and make a difference. Well, let me show you this. Here's where I lived, right here, and over here's this 18-hole golf course, a public links. And in that era, it was, civil rights were not really a thing. In fact, the black golfers would have to drive down to my part of Indiana to play. And they came to this course, the professional lifted his hands out and let him come. And so they would come, and because of that, these men were some of the best athletes, of course, and then lawyers and professional doctors and so forth. And I would be able to caddy for them on a Saturday afternoon. And so one Saturday, I left my home, 8728 Woodward. Now here I am, walking on my hands off the street. You see that? Kind of miracle. That guy got me in trouble over here. He got me to steal toys from this guy's garage. Anyway, I learned better than that later on. I was just about third grade when that happened. But here I'm going to the course, and I'm looking to caddy for one of these golfers, and they drive up, and this gentleman says, "Would you be my caddy?" I said, "I'd love to, sir." And for the next 4 hours, I had a wonderful day, because this man, not only did he hit that drive like he was Tiger Woods, but he treated me with the kind of respect that I would want to treat anybody with. He didn't treat me like I was another caddy. He treated me like I was playing as a member of the foursome. And at the end of the day, I asked one of my caddy colleagues, I said, "Who was that man?" What a wonderful person he was. He gave me real encouragement. And they said, "Don't you know who you just caddied for, Jerry? You just caddied for America's greatest Olympian, Jesse Owens." And I'll never forget Jesse, because not only was he a great medal winner in the Olympics, but he was a great person to encourage others. So now I'm going to take you back to my high school days, my formative years, and this was the era when rock and roll was just coming on the scene. And as such, okay, thank you there. That'll be great. You know, I came equipped somewhere on my person. I have one of these real magical light pointers, and I'll find it before the meeting is over. Okay, so these rock and rollers, they were coming. This was 57, the era of Elvis and Buddy Holly, Big Bopper, and so forth. And we loved rock and roll music in my high school. And so because of that, I've created a karaoke song for my audience today. Now, bear with me. This was one of the greatest rock and roll songs of the era, especially if you're in high school. And it goes like this. Here we go. Up in the morning, off the school, the teacher's teaching the old road. American history and life will go mad. Studying hard, just trying to close. Oh, come on, get right down to the bone. The guy in back, leave me alone. Ring, ring goes the bell. That's when my life began in high school, because
they're playing basketball. We'll
I get some kind of karaoke song here.
Basketball is my favorite sport. I like the way they dribble up and down the court. My favorite play is the alley-oop. I like the pick and roll. I like the give and go. 'Cause it's basketball. Mr. Curtis flow.
Guerrilla who drives, no good. The rebound by Guerrilla, no good. The rebound fought for, going in the corner. Sam Jones gets it. Back underneath the Guerrilla, back out to Heinsohn. Lays it up and in.
Now here's where I learned the practice of a feasibility study, which I use at NASA all the time. Now a feasibility study is where you measure two courses of action. You take data from one course and another course. Now, basketball in Indiana is legendary. If you want to be popular as a high school student in Indiana, you ought to be a star basketball player. And I would watch a basketball game, and I would take notes. And when the guy went out of one side of the auditorium that had scored 20 points, he'd have all these attractive cheerleaders following him. Now, I was an academic. I was doing well in my studies, and I'd go out the other side, and nobody followed me. So I did my NASA feasibility study. If I want to be popular, I'd better be a star basketball player. And if you want to be a star, you got to practice. And so every night I'd go out to my court. I'd shoot several hundred jump shots. You know, it was a long time ago. This is when they still were shooting free throws, sort of like you're an insect, you know, between your legs. But I found that if I would leap up and at the apogee of my modest orbit, that's a NASA lingo, if I leap up and get to the apogee, hold the ball, and then release it, I could shoot over a much taller opponent. And so every night I practice. But what if you don't become a star player? It would be good to study. So I'd go back into my room, study. I'd do that, study, practice. Well, studying worked. I became valedictorian in my graduating class. But basketball, I was only averaging 10 points a game. And I wanted to get a college basketball scholarship. And I only stood a centimeter over 6 foot. And I was going nowhere. But one night, I went to bed and I had a dream. And in this dream, I was on a large auditorium playing the game of basketball. And it was nice because everybody was cheering. It was Indiana. And it was like this movie. Well, I'd share this too. My high school, I had a teammate that I played with, an African-American player. We were undefeated, and he and I were buddies, and he was a friend of mine, and he would go to the mat for me on anything, and I would go to the mat for him, and we played together. So I thought this particular movie kind of captured the way that we related to one another.
What are you doing? I'm doing two things. What? I'm making them mad. Most guys don't play good when they're mad. Basketball. Look, you know you're embarrassing me. That's what you're doing. Yeah, well, that's the other thing I'm doing. I only have 4 words for you. White men can't jump. Yeah.
Well, the only thing is, I could jump. See that number 30? That's me. That guy is 6.5 foot tall, and I am out jumping him. So I could jump, you know? So Kenny and I would have a good time together, and so here's the dream. I talked about the dream. This is kind of like my dream. It's from the movie The Hoosiers. Now I thought if I had a game like that and the right coach found out about it, I just could get a basketball scholarship. Well, it was March of 1960. Indiana had no distinction for school size. Everybody competed with everybody else. Our small school of 300 students competed against schools of several thousand. And so we were in the 4th game of the tournament. We were playing the #1 team in the state of Indiana. And I came into that field house that night. And let's see if we can get into the field house. There I was. This guy here, that's me right there. And I don't know why 3 places went, but here I am. And for the next 32 minutes, these guys are like Goliaths in jockey shorts. They're all 6'3" and above. 3 of them were 6'5" and above. And our tallest guy was over here. He's 6'2½". So, but for the next 32 minutes, I had my dream game. This is me. This guy here, name is Bobby Cantrell. He's in the Indiana State Hall of Fame for defensive capability. He went on to University of Michigan, held the leading scorer in the United States, Manny Newsom, to 13 points. For 32 minutes in this game, I ate his lunch. I made 20 points against him, 8 out of 11 from the field, 4 or 5 free throws. And here's how I believe God worked in my life. The coach at Rice University had a relative that took this picture and took the sports section, sent it to South Main, Autry Court, Houston, Texas, and he opened it up, saw that picture, saw the statistics, didn't mention I only averaged 10 points a game. But then it said this. This never happens usually in a sports section. He read on, it said Jerry had been valedictorian of my graduating class. He said, this is my answer to guard on the Rice varsity. I must offer him a full scholarship. So I had it. He offered me room and board and books and fees. He even threw in $18 a month to clean my dirty laundry. He made an offer I couldn't refuse. It was the only one I had. So I was on my way. You know, I was going to be big time. I'd, of course, you know, all American honors, and maybe academically I'd be, you know, and, you know, I'd been valedictorian. And so I'm going to go south now to Houston, Texas from my little Indiana high school. I'm going to travel by way of Could you lift the sound up a little bit on the string? Or is my voice kind of That's the Rice Fight song. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to go on to All-American Honors. The newspaper came out to interview me because I was an Indiana high school product. All high school players from Indiana are great, aren't they? Well, I proved them wrong. So what had happened was I established a record at Rice University. I have the lowest shooting percentage in Rice University history. If anybody ever got a Rice basketball scholarship, I made 1 out of 18 shots. My teammate is now the president of Angelina College, Larry Phillips, and he said, well, Jerry, maybe somebody never scored. I said, well, he just timed me. I said, Larry, you remember the shot I made? Oh, yeah, can't forget it. You made it against Baylor University, closing minutes of the first half. Well, if you recall, Larry, Kendo, our 7-foot center who went on to the NBA, he was under the basket. I saw him. I threw him a pass. It went over his hands. I actually scored a bad pass. I have never scored in varsity competition. I'm 0 for 18. Nobody's eclipsed my record. Fear, failure, frustration. Now, if that isn't frustration, if that isn't failure on one of the measuring parts of your life that you want to see success in, mine was a failure. And so then they took me on a road trip up to Creighton University, Omaha, Nebraska, and we were playing against the Blue Jays, I think they call them. Here we're going up north, and they had a guy named Paul Silas. And he stood 6'7", but he jumped like it was 7'6". He set an NBA rebound record for the Celtics. And in that particular game, he needed one more basket to establish the auditorium mark. So I came in there and I watched Creighton take us apart to the extent that we were 37 points behind. Not much time left in the game, and I leaned forward on the bench. The coach saw me. He said, go into the ball game. I went into the ball game, and Silas had the ball, and one of my teammates cried out, help, switch. Now that means in basketball lingo that the other fellow wants you to take his man. And that was a bad trade for me because I was 6 foot 1 inch tall. Silas was 6'7", and I had to guard him. Coach said, scream if you think you're in trouble. Well, I was in trouble because Silas just he just leaped like a small Nike rocket, and he swept me off my feet. He had the ball, and he took the three of us, the ball, him and myself, to the basket. And then at the basket, he did an unmerciful act. He took the ball, and he brought it down in a sledgehammer dunk shot through the... Now remember, I'm on his chest. So it hit off my head. It knocked me dazed on my back, and I lay there on the auditorium floor like a dead cockroach. See, I get excited in this thing, and I hit the wrong things, so we're going to have to probably reboot the whole system. Okay, so at that point, I knew that I wasn't going on to the NBA, and as a result of that, I thought, well, what am I going to do? Well, I said, perhaps I should focus on my studies. Well, to do that, I want to show you what this looked like, though. So let me just do this. You saw that one. And I want to show you this. This is what it must have looked like that night when I was decimated by false fire. One more time. And the final injustice. To wake you up if you get tired of my show. Okay? Okay, I was not doing well. I was frustrated. I was failing. And so as a result of that, I thought, well, I'm better concentrated on studies. Well, that didn't work much better because I made another record, the lowest grade ever carded in differential equation at Rice University. Nobody's ever done worse than that. 5 is not good, that's F. So I not only made an F, I made an F minus. And I had 12 problems, 3 one-hour tests, and the final 12 I never scored on one, so I'm 0 for 12 at differential equations, 0 for 18 on the basketball court. Fear, failure, frustration. I knew them all in my college career. So if there are any students here, don't get discouraged. Don't give up. You can't have done as badly as I did, and so press on. And I tried architecture. Well, I did pass it. I did pass it. However, had I actually succeeded and gotten a degree in it, this might have been the result because I had no talent. The critic would come up to my works and he said, Mr. Woodford, this is disgusting. It's simply dreadful and awful. I suggest you find some other pursuit. So I couldn't do that either. So I didn't. I was going to quit. I felt like I had the load of the world on my shoulders, and I felt like this little dog, Blue. You know, I was just weak and done. But then President John Kennedy came to Rice Stadium, and I came to hear him talk, and what he said motivated me, and as a result of that, I want to share a few minutes of what he said. And so to do that, look at it, it says, President of the United States. So I wrote the White House and asked them, could I use the presidential seal because I wanted to give a theatric presentation of what President Kennedy had inspired me with his words. And so I got a letter back from the attorney there, and they said, no, you can't do that because it's just not legal. There's some regulation. Now, Saturday Night Live, I've seen them do it all the time without any problem, but they're not working for NASA. And so I got clever, and this is what I did. I have refashioned the seal, and what I did, I simply copied over the P. So this makes this the seal of a resident of the United. This is the residential seal. It's wholly legal. Any one of you can give a message or do a theatric work with the residential seal. So, I wanted to look very Kennedy-esque. You know, look at all the hair he has. I have very little. I haven't had any for a long time. So I tried to do different things to build up my hair. I bought one of these things that's seen on TV. It's kind of a spray, and it worked well on TV. I sent off $8.95 and got it back and tried it on my hair, and didn't work like on TV because the stuff wasn't heat fast. And in the heat of summer, they would just run right on down your hair. You looked horrible. So I tried there was this invention on the internet. It's called the comb over, and you could let your hair, grow down to your shoulders on either side and the back, and then like Donald Trump, you could just artfully, shape it, and you could that didn't work at all either. So I'm just going as myself tonight, okay, or today. So here's what he said though. Despite the striking fact that most of the scientists the world has ever known are alive and working today, despite the fact that this nation's own scientific manpower is doubling every 12 years, despite that the vast stretches of the unknown and unanswered and unfinished far outstrip our collective comprehension, no man can fully grasp how far or how fast we have come. And this is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels the old, new ignorance, new problems, and new dangers. Surely, the opening vistas of space promise high cost and hardship as well as high reward. And so it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer to rest and to wait. But this city of Houston and this state of Texas and this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. This country was conquered by those who move forward, and so will space. Now, the exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not, because it is one of the great adventures of all time, and no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space, because the eyes of the Lord look to space, to the moon and the planets beyond. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? But they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? And why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? And why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because that goal will organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we're unwilling to postpone and one that we intend to win. Now, many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why he wanted to climb it. And he said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there, and new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you. Give the president a hand. Okay. Well, here's what it really sounded like.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Okay, to remind you of what he said, I've created a song. That statement, he said, we do this not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Well, certainly failing differential equation was hard. And so I could have given up because it wasn't easy, it was hard. I could have left Rice University, gone back to Indiana, tried something else, laid out a few years. I like to share this with my wife's students. She's a community college teacher in San Jacinto Central up in Houston, Pasadena. And she has what they call college prep students that a lot of them have struggled with English and other things, that if they just get a little help, they can succeed and get a 4-year degree. So I needed a little help in that time. But to show you how rough it can get, this is really for the struggling student. I saw a lady in my church had this thing on, and I asked her where she got it. She's not this one, but she said she got one like it at Claire's. So I went over to Claire's, and theirs was $35. And what it is, so a Woody Guthrie looking hat, and he wrote a song called This Land Is Your Land. But there's another song he had called Hard Ain't It Hard. Well, I've adapted that one, and I finally found this Woody Guthrie hat at a resale shop for $8. So that's how much I enjoy doing this. And this is the song that I've created from his song. It goes like this. Well, it's hard, ain't it hard, ain't it hard, learning something you never knew. Hard, ain't it hard, ain't it hard, great God, learn something new to you. Failure's not an option, they say, but they never had that test I took today. Houston got a problem, I cried, and I knew I could pass if I tried, because it's hard, ain't it hard, ain't it hard, to learn something new to you. Well, it's hard, ain't it hard, ain't it hard, great God, learn something you never knew. Thank you, Woody. God bless you. Okay. Okay, now let's see if I can find where I laid the advancer, and there it is. So, as a result, President Kennedy, I became a NASA employee. I gave up my basketball scholarship. The coach at Rice University was blessed by President Kennedy. And I didn't mean to do that, but and this is providential. NASA hired me, and guess what? I was hired as a failure engineer, and I knew about failure in basketball and academics. So, you know, I knew how to get beyond it. And I could do the same for the space program. And so what I would do, I was assigned to looking at the checklist, that is the cookbook that the astronauts use when they fly to the moon. Because I was the project engineer responsible for the design of the warning system, I could tell astronauts when a warning light came on, what it meant, and what it was protecting them from. And they respected me because of, here's a guy who's responsible for your very life. You want to know what he's doing. So they would visit me at my desk. Apollo astronauts would come to see me. You know, I was like a GS-7, you know, just barely making a living wage. But they'd show up at my desk wanting to know how it was designed and everything. Flight controllers would ask me for putting together their checklists and how they analyzed failure. So I had a pretty responsible job, even though I had had some problems in college. I did graduate, though. I graduated at Rice University, and I was 11th out of 13th in my electrical engineering class, which I thought was probably providential because Apollo 11 landed Neil Armstrong on the moon, and of course I talk about Apollo 13. So it had to be. And so that's what I looked like when I came on way back in 1965 at NASA. And this was a challenge that I faced. Now listen to this.
Right. We have the crew crossing gantry for capsule ingress. Roger that.
Inspired by the late President Kennedy, in only 7 years, America has risen to the challenge of what he called the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. After trailing the Russians for years with our manned space program, and after that sudden and horrible fire on the launch pad during a routine test that killed American astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chapman, there were serious doubts that we could beat the Russians to the moon.
Okay, now, because I was responsible for the alarm system, I got the alarm system after it had mainly been designed. That is, I came at NASA in '65, and they already had put together preliminary designs for the lunar lander as well as the command ship. And I did what I could to improve that system, but it wasn't good enough. So it did not warn them in time, and as a result of that, I was assigned the job of redesigning both the command module warning system as well as the lunar lander's warning system. And that redesign proved very good because that's one of the things that saved Apollo 13. But I've always, as all of us did, felt a real loss because I had worked with Roger Chaffee, who was from Purdue University, and they lost their lives. And so it was just good that the Lord gave me an opportunity to help save 3 lives after these 3 men were lost. But the thing I wanted to point out, if I showed this clip again, if I could just do this, let me show this. Now watch this.
Right. We have the crew crossing gantry for capsule ingress. Roger that.
Inspired by the late President Kennedy, in only 7 years, America has risen to the challenge of what he called the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
Now watch this.
After
you see this?
The
you see that?
Years with our manned
Hollywood
space
made that
program,
the cause of the fire.
And after that sudden and horrible.
And I don't like that because I was responsible for that switch. That's not how it happened. So if you learned anything today, Jerry didn't cause the Apollo 1 fire directly. He did a lousy job, but it wasn't his switch that caused it. Okay, they took a license. They took theatric license with that by showing that switch being the thing that ignited. That switch, I went out to Rockwell, the manufacturer, and that thing was flipped 50,000 times without one failure. And I had assigned a release on that, a certification quality test thing, that it was a safe switch, and it was. But Hollywood, did their thing on me. Okay. So there I was, doing the alarm system. That's what the alarm sounded like. And so here's the assessment for you that are a student, and whatever you're doing, don't give up. You can have setbacks and so forth, even F's and terrible careers, but you can come around. So despite my dreadful failures, I did graduate. I told you that. And now, I want to show you this because this shows you if you don't give up, ultimately, if you live long enough and stay with it long enough, you'll succeed. So 50 years after my dismal basketball career, look at this. These are Nobel Prize winners. These guys are athletes of professional quality. So 50 years later, NASA, Rice University has this website where they have distinguished notable alumni. So look what happened 50 years later. Apollo 11 warning system, I am listed among others. See, if you wait long enough and don't give up, it may take 50 years, but eventually you'll succeed. Okay. And I want to make a big point of. I think the greatest engineer, or really even the student, is the person that can take something and look at it. And I've known people like that. They may not even have sometimes a PhD or anything like that, but they can look at something, and God gave them some kind of a gift that they can look to how to solve something very quickly. Sometimes this is just almost uncanny. It's almost supernatural. And it's the person that can see something, whether it's an engineering problem, and he can just look and see the simplest way to solve the problem, the most complex problem in the simplest way. And people think it's so simple, they say, well, that's that's nothing to it. Well, why didn't you think about it then? You know, that's what will happen. And that's happened to all of us. You know, we've seen that happen in our lives. And so I want to give you an example of that. This is a project I worked on. It was called the Advanced Autopilot Experiment, and it was on the shuttle. And the idea was that we wanted to test out a computer system that would control the movement of the shuttle in space. And it had never been tested before, but we had to come up with a way of making sure that it worked in space. And if I can find my prop for it, I'll give you a demonstration of a simple thing that I found is a solution to it. And so here's an example of what we had. What we were going to do is we're going to take a target in the cargo bay of the shuttle while it orbited Earth, and then we're going to put this target into space, and then we're going to put one of the shuttle cameras on it, and then we're going to control the shuttle through the guidance system in its computer using this new kind of software. Now the idea was that we could monitor, and then we could use, it's a really good kind of software. Well, to do the target, this is my mock-up of the target, and so this is it. The astronauts asked me to come out, and we wanted to test this target out, and there's a golf course near NASA called Ellington Field. So after work, and it had gotten dark, I went over there, and the crew of, I think it was STS-61B, said, Jerry, go out there about 50 yards, we're going to shine a flashlight on you, and we want to see what the target looks like in the dark side of the Earth, so that we can be confident we'll be able to see it. So I went out there, and I held my target up. They were about 50 yards away, and I could just like that shining on me right there. You know, they could see it. And then the astronaut said, well, Jerry, would you rotate the target? Rotate it? I never thought about that. Yeah, they said, when they just release it in the shuttle cargo bay, likely it's going to have a moment of rotational moment or something. It's going to rotate around. We want to know what it looks like. Well, I hadn't thought about that. Well, here's where the thing about the easiest solution to the most complex problem. Now, certainly I could have developed some kind of a mechanism that would rotate it very carefully and accurately, but I had played golf that day, and this thought came to me. You know, I think I got a way of making it rotate. If at the last hole, I remember I teed off, and I had one of those tees still left in my pocket. So I thought if I could take one of those tees, these were styrofoam, and I could put one up here, and I could just put my index finger on there and use my thumb to impart rotational motion. But if I didn't have another tee, I reached in my other, I had Ben Hogan golf pants, they were bright red. And so I reached in there and I had two of the tees. And so here I was, I had the perfect mechanism. This was like the simplest way for a complex problem. So that's an example of coming up with a solution in real time of something that looks like a real tough problem, but you figure it out. So I want to show you what it looked like in space. There it is. He did a pretty good job of releasing it. You don't want to put any kind of emotion on it, and he did an excellent job. The only problem with that thing is it was supposed to descend to Earth in about 3 months, but we miscalculated. It took 6 years to come back to Earth, and our fear was it was going to land on somebody's head, but we never did. So we saved an embarrassment. Okay, I didn't give up. I told you that. I've been an engineer for 49 years, 8 months, and 10 days. And I celebrate my 50th anniversary this June 14th, and I'll celebrate my 50th wedding anniversary June 25th. That's one date I need to remember better. Okay? Okay, now I'm going to talk about failures leading to success in NASA. We're going to get into the space program, and here's some of the problems we had. Vanguard, December 6th, 1957, our first attempt to put something in orbit. Did not go well. It was worse than my basketball career. Well, we tried again, and this thing had a problem with orientation control. Maybe you take a course of dynamics. It didn't work right. That's not good. Now, the third example is one of staging. It's a fine staging example, but it shouldn't be 3 stages, 1,000 feet, not good. So we were having problems. They were not going well. Okay, we were failing. Okay, they had their Sputniks. The Soviets said we had our Flopniks, you see. And so we were frightened. Some of you may have been alive during the 60s and so forth when there was the threat of an ICBM shooting an atomic warhead from Moscow and hitting Chicago or Houston and so forth. And so then Sputnik came up in October of 1957. And to capture that, I've got a song for you guys. And it's one that was popular then because of the frightened people in America. So watch the screen and I'll do my song for you. And here's how it goes. Sputniks and Mutniks flying through the air. Sputniks and Mutniks are flying everywhere. It's so ironic. Are they atomic? That Russian Sputnik just got me scared. Well, the strangest looking object ever saw in space, with a dog inside on a ride above the USA to see our groundhogs, American hound dogs. That Russian Sputnik got me scared. Our scientists, they tell us we're 5 years behind, but if that's true, I'm telling you, this hiding place is mine. Don't care if it's gloomy, just so it's roomy, and it's somewhere but me can't find. Sputniks and Mutniks flying through the air. Sputniks and Mutniks are flying everywhere. It's so ironic. Are they atomic? That Russian Sputnik got me scared. Okay, the Russian Sputniks. Go into the next one. By the way, we're going to do a DVD we're going to make of this. Media department here at Temple College is agreed to help me with this. So I'm going to go in through a lot of things, so you guys are going to learn a lot about the space program. For example, how the original 7 Mercury astronauts were selected. And of course, here's a launch of one of their Redstone rockets. Once again, here we go. Now that's the escape system, and that's not good. They launched the escape system instead of the rocket. That'll spoil your day if you're the astronaut's going to ride this thing, which was going to be El Shepherd in the Atlantic Ocean. And there went your recovery raft along with the escape system, so now you're not going to have any ability to stay afloat in the Atlantic Ocean. So he's watching this thing, and would you agree, we started with humiliating failure, just like my career in basketball. So, in order to remind you of that, there's a song, and this song is based on Elvis Presley's song, and I'm very proud of this song. It has to do with John Glenn. That's the later song, but this song is one that you'll appreciate because it really captures the sense of all our failures. And in order to do that song, let's see if I don't have my props. Oh yeah, here they are. This is going to be done Elvis style. So here you go. Got to get this on the video. And here's how the song goes. And let's get this back. Okay. Okay. Climbed into the capsule, waiting to lift off. In the next few seconds, was too scared to cough. Capcom put it like this: return to orbit, face the unknown, please don't call us, there's no phone. NASA said don't worry about nothing at all. The state of Florida will surely break your fall. Return to orbit, face the unknown, please don't call us, there's no phone. And that's your spacesuit. Ah, they said it cost a lot. And there's your crash helmet. I said, I hope not. Return to orbit, face the unknown, please don't call us, there's no phone. 3, 2, 1 was the countdown. When I said, why me? They said, we ran out of chimpanzees, it's your turn, you see. 3 turned to orbit, face the unknown, please don't call us, there's no phone. When I heard that booster blast, I knew soon I'd be rocket litter. And they said, what do you expect? It was built by the lowest bidder. Return to orbit, face the unknown, please don't cause there's no phone. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And let's go. And here's one that I really like. It's Chuck Berry. He's one of my favorites. I'm still working on learning how to do his duck walk. There's a YouTube on it, and I just about got it down, but I injured myself and had to take it goes something like this. You know, you just kind of rock with your guitar. I'm 72 years old, so I'm really blessed to be able to move around like this. You know, I went to, what was it, Clarendon College or somewhere, and some of the 40-year-old professor, man, he said, I can't move like that guy. I'm 30 years younger. So I feel blessed that I can still move around and do these programs. But this is one that is based on a song that is really a big hit for Chuck Berry, and it was called what was it? Johnny Be Good. Okay. So let me start it going, and here again, watch the thing, and if you'll do me a favor and go to YouTube and put my name, Jerry Whitfield, and Johnny Be Good or something, you'll build up my count. I've got 800 viewings.
Godspeed, John Glenn. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Deep down in Florida, north of Everglades, Johnny Glenn sat in his capsule, history about to be made. Thousands of people came from miles around. Watch Johnny launch, hear his rocket sound. He was in a celestial race, trying to catch those Soviets in space. Go, 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 Johnny, go, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, Godspeed, Johnny H. Glenn. Well, he sailed like an eagle into the sky. Brave Johnny was not afraid to die. They said his heat shield might fail. He'd come back to earth in a blazing trail. His wife and family they'd not see again. Johnny would have a fiery end. Go, go. Go, Johnny, go, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, Godspeed, Johnny H. Glenn. Well, he shot down 3 MiGs in the Korean War, flying Sabre jets for America's Marine Corps. But no fire in heaven, earth, or space could keep Johnny Glenn from his rightful place. Tales would be told for decades to come, how Johnny H. Glenn faced death and won. Go, 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 Johnny, go, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, Godspeed, Johnny H. Glenn. Hey, thank you, John. Thank you. One of the most treasured things I have, I took the lyrics, typed them out, and put John Glenn's picture on it, sent it to Ohio State University, and he signed it and returned it to me. He says, thanks, Cherry. So I keep that in my office. That's memorabilia that is just priceless for me. So did I hit the wrong thing again? I laid it down, and I think you're going to have to reboot the thing again. No, and yet, despite the fears, the failure, frustration. Okay, that's the point. We won the trip to the moon despite being behind.
Houston, say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main B bus undervolt.
Roger, main B undervolt. Okay, stand by, 13. We're looking at it.
And we had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning there.
Did you hear that? The first alert, the first warning was exactly that system, the caution and warning system that I'd worked so hard to improve from the days of Apollo 1 when those men perished in the fire. It was the first thing that told those astronauts on Apollo 13 that they were in big problems. I saw that in my console that I was looking at, I saw 6 different lights come on, any one of which meant that they would not survive. And for the next 4 days, we as a team, a STEM team, wrestled with all those problems. Every bit of our education, all the camaraderie we had, all the tests had to be poured into one 4-day attempt to save 3 men's lives. And so here's some of the things that happened. This is the quote from the movie.
I want this mark all the way back to Earth with time to spare. Failure is not an option.
Yet at times, it may look like an option for... Let's see if I can get this to play. Yes, I'm going to play this.
Hey, we've got a problem here.
Hey.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem. We have a main bus B undervolt. We've got a lot of thruster activity here, Houston. It just went offline. Oh, there's another master alarm, Houston.
Doesn't make any sense.
We got multiple caution and warning, Houston. We've got to reset and restart.
All right.
Okay, so in my distinguished career of 50 years, I also saved Tom Hanks' life. Okay, let's see what else we got here. And the things that save it led to perhaps, this is the point. You know, I asked students, do you remember Apollo 11? Nobody knows. What's Apollo 11? I say, do you remember Apollo 13? Oh, yes, everybody knows. They'd saved the movie, seen the movie. But Apollo 11, of course, put Neil Armstrong on the moon. So it's through failure and overcoming adversity that people recognize, and it's inspirational to them. See?
The spacecraft had 3 parts. The cone-shaped command module was where all 3 men would ride for most of the trip, to the moon and back to Earth. The spidery lunar module would carry 2 astronauts to the lunar surface, then be left behind. The last critical piece was the service module, which contained the main engine and oxygen tanks.
Okay, 5 years ago on the 40th anniversary, a website called Universe Today, at my suggestion, put up a series of 13 things that saved Apollo 13. So on the 41st anniversary, I said, hey, I'd like to suggest 13 more things. And so this week, if you Google Universe Today, you will see these 13 things, because this week is the 45th anniversary of the rescue of Apollo 13. And now they're in the 5th thing of those 13. So if you go on there, you'll see the last 7 or 8, okay? And I wanted to share this with you. I worked in an area called the Mission Evaluation Room. And in this room, we were looking over the shoulders of the astronauts and the flight controllers. Incidentally, it's like we designed the whole thing. So after we designed it, we would tell the flight controllers and astronauts how it works. And then we'd draw drawings to show how all the different parts function together, how the wiring was laid out on the interior of the entire lunar lander as well as the command ship. And in that capacity, we worked in a room that was apart from Mission Control, but in communication with Mission Control. So this is me, good-looking guy at that day, wasn't I? And then this is another fella that was a Hispanic American named Art Campus. Art contributed one of the main things that saved those guys' lives. And what he had come up with was a procedure of how to charge some batteries that were in the reentry capsule that had been depleted during the actual first moments after the explosion. Had we not been able to charge those batteries up, they could not have survived. But Art had come up with a procedure how to jumper charge power from the big batteries in the lunar lander to the little batteries, reentry batteries in the entry capsule. And had that procedure not been available, which Art came up with, they wouldn't have lived. So Art really made his equal contribution to anybody to Now that sound is a little bit exaggerated. If you've taken any kind of grade school or high school physics, you know, face a vacuum, sound doesn't propagate in a vacuum. And it didn't sound like that anyway. When I was responsible for its design, this is what it sounded like, the alarm. It's aggravating, but it's not boom, 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 boom. It'll get your attention, certainly. And this is a point I want to make about studying. If you procrastinate, you might fail the test or make a lousy grade, but we couldn't do that on Apollo 13 because the men would have died. We had to come up in 3 days with things that took 3 months and do it. Here's one of those things right now.
Just isn't a contingency we've remotely looked at.
Those CO2 levels are going to be getting toxic.
Well, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole. Rapidly.
Okay, people, listen up. People upstairs handed us this one, and we got to come through. We got to find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build a filter.
Better get some coffee going, too, someone.
The deadly CO2 gas is literally poisoning the astronauts with every breath in and out.
Heads up, heads up.
And spokespeople will not comment further.
Go. Heads up, people. Look out now. What's this? That's what they got to make.
Well, I hope you got the procedures for me.
Right here.
That's it?
Remember my simplest solution to the most complex problem? Well, that's what they did right there, because despite all our advanced degrees and PhDs and my BS in electrical engineering, the thing that saved their lives was this thing here. It's called duct tape. Now, if that won't humiliate you and humble you, that you have to count on something like this to get 3 men back from space, because these square filters would not work in the round receptacle. This is an oil filter I hadn't changed my oil yet. But anyway, the idea was it came up with, some guys came up in our group, in the Crew Systems group, they came up with a way of taking plastic bags that were for the suits and simply putting the square filters in those bags, you know. And then they had in here, I think I've got it, I think I brought it with me. My wife probably is going to be angry, but it's her hose from her vacuum cleaner. And so simply we cut a hole in one part of it, and this one end went into what they call the suit fan. And there was a fan that would pull atmosphere from the suit and circulate it through the cabin and everything. And so that was kind of like a blower. And this blower would suck air out of the cabin, put it in the suit, and then if you put your square filter in this bag and you had it sucking air through it, you didn't need to use the round barrel for the lunar landers. Limited number of filters. You could use all these. There are 24 of these in the command ship, and so you could use them. And the interesting thing about it is, okay, so what? You say, well, the problem with it, like everything else, you put this thing in the bag, it leaks. it leaks, but if you have duct tape, you can cover up all those leaks and just tape it up real well. So that was an example of that dictum I showed you earlier. And then to make my point altogether clearer, I have another song. And this song is about a prospector in West Texas. And the idea here is that he has the traditional story of he can't find water and his canteen is running dry, and he sees what he thinks may be a mirage out there that looks like a water pump. And it is a real water pump, and he goes up to it, and the problem with a water pump in the desert is you have to have something to prime it. So he looks around, and somebody in a bitters can or jar has left a little bit of water there. And so because he has that, he can make it, and he saves his life. Well, duct tape is kind of like that for Apollo 13. And so to honor duct tape, I've written a song about duct tape and Apollo 13, you know. And I put it on the internet as a YouTube, and I did it for a class in West Texas, by the way. So I had one of my colleagues come into my office, and I told him a little story I just told you. I gave a little demonstration with the square filter, and I had some scissors so I could cut the edge and everything. But then I said, I want to perform this song for you. And so I had my colleague hold my little iPhone camera on me, and I did the song. Well, this is the song I did, and I'd like you to start I got to start it, that's right. And watch the slide, and it kind of goes through the whole thing, and I sing my song for you guys. Well, a spaceship exploded 200,000 miles in space, and too few round CO2 filters meant death was in their face. But the damaged mothership had plenty that were square. But how to make a square filter fit in a round hole was their prayer. So they looked around the spaceship to find a way and found something that just might work that day. No rocket science needed for this device. An old roll of duct tape would work very nice. You got to use what you have faith and believe. 'Cause the plain things in life are all free to receive. Failure's no option when problems show up. Simple things will help us. Thank God for everyday stuff. So they took those square filters along with gray duct tape and moon rock bags and spacesuit hoses to mate. And while mission control worked to do the same, it was on-board roll of duct tape that won the game. No need for rocket science or theoretical calculations. That roll of sticky adhesive solved all machinations. A solution for every unforeseen test. Don't ever be without it, 'cause duct tape always works the best. You got to use what you have faith and believe. 'Cause the plain things in life are all free to receive. Failure's no option when problems show up. 'Cause simple things will help us. Thank God for everyday stuff. Okay, thank you, Desert Pete. And so they were saved. And so, our final slide today is this one. And it's one that I think you'll appreciate if I can get it to start. Let's see.
Apollo 13 flight controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no-go for launch.
Geometry.
We're go flight.
Earth science.
Go flight.
Life science.
We're go flight.
Algebra.
We're go.
Astronomy.
Go.
Computer science.
Go flight.
Pre-calculus.
Go.
STEM studies. Go flight.
Capcom. We're go flight. Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
the final slide, but there's one more, and I'm going to make you all honorary Apollo 13 flight controllers. And in order to do that, I wear this wristband. One side says, Houston, we have a problem. Maybe you get up, you feel like that before you have your coffee in the morning, and then you roll it over and says, failure's not an option, and you can go on for the day. So what I'd like to do with you guys is if I can find the clicker, is for you all to say the pledge. So hands over the heart, and we're going to make you honorary flight controllers. And the thing here is you're each going to get one. I think I got enough to give each one of you one of these wristbands to remember this, and remember that if you get discouraged or you fail, you're frustrated, that there's always another day, okay? So let's say it together. Hands over the heart, flight controllers, okay? I will do my best. Can you say that with me? I will do my best not to be discouraged by fear, frustration, and failure in pursuit of my goals, and I will encourage others to do likewise because, now here it is, failure is not an option. Okay, everybody, you're now honorary flight controllers, and come get your bracelet. I think I got enough for everybody. Yay.